Welcome to the OpenHearted Podcast. Hello and welcome to the OpenHearted Podcast. I'm your host, Will Wheeler, joined with my main man, Photon John. What's going on, brother?
For a full-on day. Just came back for a funeral and kicking off a 21-show tour tonight.
Oh, damn. Sort of taking the good with the bad, right?
Yeah. It was a lovely.
Can't really say, oh, man, that's a good way to kick off the tour. But, these things happen. And I suppose this is it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was a beautiful sort of celebration of his life rather than...
Cool.
I mean, you can sort of intensely feel the sadness in the room, but it was positive.
Yeah. Understandable. I think as happy as you could be at a funeral, it's still going to be sad, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? But as long as it was a good send-off and that was good. But I tell you what, man, maybe to turn things around and make it a bit more of a bright day, you know, we've got an awesome guest joining us today, so I might bring her up onto the stage. We're joined by Lisa Cox, all the way from Queensland, Brisbane. How are you, Lisa?
Hello. Really great to be here. Thank you very much for having me on.
Nice. Not a problem. So before we jumped on, we were just talking that we are all from Brisbane. So this is going to be one hell of an awesome podcast. And if there are people who are listening from overseas, like being Australian, being from Brisbane, and I suppose just in Australian in general, there's always this, I suppose, like fun, like, come up, what's the word I'm looking for? Sort of like just a bit of a rivalry between the states and all that type of stuff. So we're just having a bit of a laugh there. But Lisa, what's been going on? You're down in Sydney today, right?
I am. I'm down in Sydney, and that's why there's a big bed behind me. I'm coming to you from the hotel room.
Nice.
So down in Sydney, I was speaking to an awesome group of film and TV people about representation of disability in the film and TV industry and how to do it better, how to represent disability in front of the camera and behind the camera, because that's one of the things I'm incredibly passionate about and have a little bit of experience in. So that's why I'm coming to you from a hotel room with a big bed behind me.
Nice. But, you know, I think that's beautiful. You know, that works in well with what we're talking about today. So for all listeners who are listening in, today what we're going to actually be covering is advertising media representation and the power of visibility and disability. Lisa, I got to say, when you sent me through that headline for that is one long headline there, but it makes sense, right?
Yeah, it's something we need to see a lot more of, and something I really, really love to be involved in. So let's talk about it.
Yeah, totally. But before we get into it, I'm just going to do what we normally do, doing a little bit of a shout out here. So for all of our listeners listening in, if you haven't already done so, please subscribe, like, and follow to all of our social media platforms. We've got Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We're now live on Twitch, YouTube, and not Instagram, LinkedIn. And also, too, if you haven't already done so, please connect with us on our podcast, which is available on all podcasting platforms. Cool. So before we start off, you know, and get into this awesome topic, why don't you just give us a little bit of background about yourself? What are you doing, you know, because you're doing some amazing stuff out there, and I see all the work you're doing. Tell the audience a little bit about what you're up to.
Thanks, Will. So I had a background in media marketing and advertising, and was working away in that, working in mainstream advertising agencies until I had a stroke and acquired multiple visible and invisible disabilities. So that was nearly 2 decades ago. And then realised that I could combine my professional background with my acquired disability. So now I work with government and business to really help them navigate the nuances of disability representation in the work that they do, both behind the camera and in front of the camera, because to put it bluntly, they have, can I swear on this podcast? I have no fucking idea of what they're doing. They want to do representation well, but
let's not go too hardcore on the swearing. But
they want to do it well.
Yeah.
But we are all Queenslanders.
They need a little bit of help. And I used to be one of those people, so I understand where they're coming from. I used to be that disabled content creator, that writer in an advertising agency. It was like, I want to be diverse and inclusive, but geez, I don't want to offend. I don't want to step on toes. I want to do it the right way. Someone please help me. And I know from experience that the way to help people is not to just sit on Twitter and say, do better, F you. Yeah. So I sit with brands and decision makers and roll up my sleeves, have those tough conversations and workshop ways to do it better, be inclusive, and that's how we create change, not just sit on Twitter and be an asshole about it. So
Yeah, totally. And I think that's a really good way to go about it. I think, and I know you and I have had these conversations before, as in, if we're going to create real change, it's not about, like you said, getting on there and ragging on people and saying this and that. I think the thing is we really need to work with people and do it in a professional way as well, to be able to help people understand. And look, don't get me wrong, people are still missing the point. And don't get me wrong, there's probably people who aren't even trying to really make certain changes happen, right? Yeah. But, there are a lot of people out there as well who do want to make change. They do want to learn about, disability, neurodiversity, mental health, whatever that is. But really, we can't put down those people, because of what I see a lot of the time is someone might be, I don't know, doing something to help a certain genre. Maybe they're not from that genre themselves, but people are shooting them down because maybe they're not approaching it correctly or something like that. And instead of shooting them down, let's help these people.
Well, we live in an age of accountability, which is fantastic, but
accountability is really important.
Yeah, but there can be a tendency to be unnecessarily combative with someone who doesn't get it, rather than to try and educate them. And I think that's a better way to go about it.
Totally.
And it's really important to make people accountable, but it's also really important to have those difficult conversations. And I take accountability for times when I am wrong. I don't always get it right. I don't always say the right thing. But at the same time, I don't always understand. And I want someone to say, no, Lisa, you're wrong. And here's why. And here's the right thing to say. I try to think of things. How would I like to have been approached and spoken to when I was a 24-year-old non-disabled writer, content creator? And the way to educate me and make me do it the right way and understand disability was not to shame me and call me out and go, F you, do it the right way, educate yourself and make me read a 100,000-word book overnight on a deadline. That's not how you create change and get things done. So I'm trying to think of the ways that we can do it. Can do it better. So I'm working with other people with disability, because I'm not the only person. I'm certainly not speaking for everybody here. Working with peak disability organisations, other people with disabilities, to create that change, and other brands and businesses who share my vision for change.
It's interesting. Like you said, you acquired your brain injury and all of that stuff, something around about 20 years ago. And before that, it was probably completely different. So in a way, you have a really good understanding of both sides of that. Am I correct?
Correct. That's absolutely correct.
Which is, it's almost gold because there's probably an upside and downside to that, obviously, but because you've been there, done that, and it's like, okay, well, this is someone who understands and gets it. If that makes sense. It
has been helpful in some ways. To have that understanding of both sides of the coin, I suppose. I see where both sides are coming from. I wear two hats, I suppose. And the TEDx talk that I did at the end of last year, speaking as an industry professional, but as a disability advocate at the same time, and seeing it from both sides.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I actually I didn't see it like live or anything like that, but for any of our listeners, where could they find that? Is that up on social media or
it will be soon. So the process for a TEDx talk is that it's currently over in New York, and the people over in New York, it's like this Bermuda Triangle. It's over in New York, and they're deciding when they'll release it, and it will. I'll get an email one day to say yes, it's released, and
okay. Well, great. When it's released, please let us know.
It was up on Facebook for a very short period, but then it was sent away and edited, and now it's over in New York. With the TED people.
Okay. Wow,
not bad.
Wow, I didn't realize there was so much of a process. I just thought you get up on stage, you get film. Okay, fair enough. Enough. Cool. But before, sorry, Kev, do you want to go?
Yeah, I kind of just wanted to. I just had a question come to mind. I know, and Will and I have spoken about this a lot, and I'm sure you've experienced it yourself, that when you're neurodistinct and the person you're talking to is neurotypical, explaining how your brain works can be quite difficult, and because they're incapable of thinking the way that you do and vice versa. Is there any insight you could offer there, having had a foot in both worlds, in terms of like successfully being able to communicate something that they can't fully experience and may not be able to understand just by thinking about it? Sorry to put you on the spot.
That was pretty intense.
I should tell your listeners.
That's okay.
I have a brain injury these days, and so when you say things to me, it takes me so much time to process it.
That's okay.
Maybe break it down a bit, Kev.
Yeah. So basically, it can be very difficult to explain as a neurodivergent person to a neurotypical person what the difference is in because your brains work in fundamentally different ways.
Yeah.
So given that you've been on both sides of that coin, did that help you in any way in terms of communicating what it's like to be neurodiverse to neurotypical people?
I'm still not entirely sure I understand that question, to be completely honest with
That's
you.
okay. That's okay.
I'm assuming, this is just what I'm picking up from the question. Because you were once neurotypical, for example, and now you're neurodistinct.
Yeah.
Because you were once neurotypical, does it make it easier for you to be able to communicate what you're sort of going through to people who aren't us, if that makes sense? Is that what you mean, Kev?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's bloody impossible. It's so bloody hard to communicate, as you will see now, to communicate what is going on up here to anyone who is not
going through.
But I do find it a little bit easier to communicate. So talking to you guys, I can a heap of word vomit, and you're like, yeah, we get it.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there are some neurotypical listeners on this call right now who are like, what is she talking about?
Yeah.
Oh, that the story of our life.
Yeah.
You know that. So you don't need to apologize.
No.
But yeah, that word vomit that just came out, that is my everyday.
Yeah. Cool.
And that's and it's funny because like we're the exact same, you know. And you know, I think this is the thing, and this is why I suppose neurodistinct people connect so well with each other, or we have that connection there, because it's like if someone does spew out, like you said, word vomit stuff or whatever, I don't sit there and go, what the hell's up with this person? I get it. Do you know what I mean? A lot of the time I'm picking, oh yeah, I know exactly what this person's talking about.
I suppose my husband, who's been with me for 10 years now, he's neurotypical, but he's just been with me for so long. He's used to the word vomit. And he just knows now when, because I have a sleep disorder from the brain injury, and I just babble sometimes, and especially after I'm medication at night. And he just knows when I'm talking not necessarily coherent, that's what she means. And so he's used to it, even though he's neurotypical. So that's...
Yeah, and I think you would get, you know, would like, you know, people, I'd say you would get used to a type of thing. You'd sort of, you know, I don't, it's hard for me to explain because I'm not neurotypical, you know what I mean? But before anything, and I was going to say this before, if we do have anyone who wants to ask any questions or comment, please comment below on whatever platform you're listening on. But we did have someone send something through. Anyone not neurodivergent can imagine the feral nature of animals, and we are that. I'm not 100% sure what that one means. Kev, can you interpret that one, brother?
No.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, thanks for that one. All right. Maybe that person will message back through shortly in regards to maybe what that meant there. But let's get stuck into this. So, you know, you've spoken a little bit about, you know, a lot of the awesome stuff you're doing, the awesome person you are. But what would be your broad view on the state of visibility for disability in media?
Okay, I spoke about this yesterday at the presentation I did, and it has definitely improved, which is so good to see, but it is still far from where it should be on the globally and within Australia as well. So yesterday I spoke about film and television, and it has improved. It's better in things like film and TV, but I know my TEDx talk was about advertising specifically, and Nielsen data shows that 1% of ads during prime time feature people with a disability. And considering that we are not just neurodiversity but disability generally, 20% of the population, the world's largest majority, that is absolute BS. So it is better, but it's far from perfect. So it can be improved, and that's one thing I'm working with so many other people to improve, including you guys.
Yeah, no, awesome stuff. Sorry, I think that person's just come back to us. A little compassion and helping of curiosity. And a helping of curiosity is the recipe for neurotypical and neurodistinct partnerships. It's definitely doable. So I'm assuming, like, you know, working together type of thing to really achieve, I suppose, the goals that we're working towards there. I think that's what
definitely you know, working together. It's I've mentioned this numerous times on social media, hashtag stronger together. This idea that you stay in your lane, I'll stay in my lane, you stay in your lane. We're all going towards the same sorts of goals. So wouldn't it be more productive if we all jump in the same canoe and row together? I've tried to collaborate with different people a few times, and no, I'm doing my thing, and So now I only work with people who, or I work with people because we work stronger together. I admit I have my weaknesses and I have my strengths, and we all work better together. So I love collaborating with people, and that's how we get things done. So
yeah, and it's so true because, you know, especially with a lot of the work that I'm doing in, say, the adult education space, you know, it's pretty much, you know, a lot of the work I do in the adult education space, it almost does flow over into, you know, the corporate space or any type of space. And I always say it's a two-way street because, you know, so for example, what can happen with a lot of in adult education, especially around neurodiversity, and being a teacher myself, all that, I would often see people would use their neurodiversity as almost an excuse to get out of something or something like that, or not to complete an assessment or something like that. And I always say, because, you know, people come to me about how can we help neurodistinct people in education and all that. And I'm like, look, we can do this. But once if someone says this and this, and it's like, well, this is where, you know, the neurodistinct person really needs to work in with these people as well. So, yeah, it's definitely a two-way street to be able to achieve that goal there. Kev, did you have anything you wanted to go off on that, mate?
You sort of spoke about, you know, neurodiverse people using it as an excuse, which is a thing that happens. I've experienced it in relationships and stuff. But then there's also the neurotypical people, say employers in particular, if they haven't made the effort to gain an understanding, you know, like this person said, have a little compassion and a little bit of curiosity and really try to explore and understand the person that's working for them or that they're in a relationship with, they can use their own neurotypical logic to try to understand their behavior and end up at the wrong conclusion, which can also be, oh, I think they're just trying to make an excuse. You know what I mean? So it requires a sort of a base level of understanding, I think. And then from that you figure out, okay, so how do we both come to the party? Because both people, you know, both parties need to come to the table and work from there. But I think without that foundation of sort of base level understanding, but that's sort of the thing I was referring to before, was I struggled to communicate what that base level of understanding needs to be with people sometimes. But, you know, you work through it.
Story of our lives, right?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Now, you know, we spoke about the media. Now, what would be your broad view of the state of visibility in the advertising side of things now? And did you sort of answer that before, or could you sort of go more off that? Like, what would we like to see, or what's not happening?
I did touch on that before, and yeah, advertising is my one, I suppose, true passion, given that I spent so much time in the advertising industry, working in agencies. So my background, for you listeners, was a copywriter. So I wrote advertising scripts and then cast talents, worked with producers to create those scripts, made the radio ads, wrote the advertisements that you'd see in magazines, in the newspapers, those sorts of things. So creating ones that are more diverse in all sorts of ways, but specifically around disability is something that I really want to see now. And all the excuses that we hear, I know for a fact that they are BS, because I have that inside knowledge about how it can be done and why they are BS. So there are agencies that do have the talent, and there are ways that it can be done better. And knowing that I can sit with the content creators and really work through the nuances of, okay, this is how the script can be changed and this is how the camera angles can be changed, because it's not just a case of plonk a wheelchair in front of camera and tick a box, yes, we've done it. It's really, really specific stuff that you need that greater understanding of. And that's something that I talk to advertising agencies about and chief marketing officers and all the work I do now. Really, really nuanced information. There's, I suppose, one of the reasons, or actually not another reason, but one of the reasons I was going to come down to Sydney. It's not the reason I'm here. I was asked, but I turned down the job. So, something I do on the side is appear in front of the camera. It's not really my main job, but I turned down the job. I won't name the client, but they asked me to appear in a television ad. I said, sure, great. Send me the script. And I read the script and said, not a chance in hell. There's no way I'm going to do this. So without giving away too much, the camera is panning through all different scenes in Australia. And one of the scenes, the diversity scene, was a camera plonked in the middle of, a random beach, Bondi Beach, let's say, a wheelchair in the middle of the beach. And for those of you who aren't wheelchair users, wheelchairs just don't end up in the middle of a beach. It can't happen. And there was absolutely no way I was going to be involved with that ad. I said, you can't do that, but I'm happy to consult about ways we can make all of this happen. But they weren't interested in those sorts of things. So it just goes to show that I suppose there's a lot more understanding about how to make things inclusive and include disability. And this is only last week. Inclusive and diverse, but
realistic.
And
Totally.
I didn't want the job and I didn't want the money, and I was happy to turn it down on moral grounds because I really, really hoped I didn't get some random person in a wheelchair who had no agency and just turned up for the job and went, oh, okay. I'll never know because, but anyway, so it's really, really disappointing that even now they don't want to have these sorts of conversations. So there's an advertisement being shot or has been shot that's going to go out internationally for a really, really big company that's
So they were trying to create a diverse, so to speak,
they were trying
advertisement, and they weren't listening to the person who would know.
It's actually interesting because while you were speaking, I wrote down something, right? And I thought to myself, okay, you've got a company, for example, showing, disability and being inclusive or whatever that is, right?
Mm-hmm.
But are these companies inclusive companies? If I went to that company, do I get support for being neurodistinct? That's another thing as well, Is it this fake type of thing?
That's always the thing that I talk to, because I, as I mentioned, do speak to the agencies, brands all the time. I've written articles about it. It's not just a case of doing one campaign for the whole year and thinking, right, job done. I've been diverse in my advertising. I've been inclusive in my advertising. It takes consistency, for example. So one campaign in January does not make consistent branding. You need to do it the year round and the next year and next year. And
within your company and in everything you do, your shops need to be inclusive and all of that if you've got
and
shops.
Your website. So is for example, my eyesight and my brain are all a bit of a mishmash. So, is your website accessible as well as your shop front? Accessibility is not just a ramp at the door. It's online. It's making sure the change room is not full of boxes. It's a whole heap of stuff.
Yeah, totally.
And this is not I always say, because I know your listeners are not, marketers and brand.
They may be.
They may be. They get a bit overwhelmed. They'll say, "Don't worry, guys. There are people and there are companies and there are people out there who specialize in this sort of stuff to make it all easy, because the minute they hear, oh, we've got to do this and this and this and this, they just get overwhelmed and think it's all too hard, and it all goes in a too hard basket and it's forgotten about for another year. And that's really stopping progress in these areas, whether it's advertising, marketing or anything like that, is it's too hard. They think we just don't do it. Mm-hmm. So starting these conversations and sitting them down and going, okay, it's, we can do this, and then but speak to these people about the website and look at this way, and creating content. I've created a lot of content that I publish on LinkedIn about consider this as well and this as well, and ways to be a question I get from a lot of brand managers: how do we be inclusive without being tokenistic? Which is a fair enough question. Going back to my history,
I'm glad people are asking it.
They're asking it. I sit down with them and say, right, this is a safe space. We have really intimate groups of say 20 brand managers in the room, and I always say to them, there are no stupid questions. Ask anything you want. And they do. They ask me all the stupid questions, and I always say to them there are no stupid questions, because I once had a lot of stupid questions, and I guarantee if there are any stupid questions, I've once thought it before. So, and most of the questions I have thought before, including how I do it without being tokenistic. Mm-hmm. So the question about the tokenism, I say, for example, just plonking a wheelchair in the ad, make it realistic. So if you have, an ad for, I don't know, trekking through snow or trekking through sand or something, plonking a wheelchair in that ad is not realistic, because you do not drag a wheelchair through snow or sand. And it really does look to everybody like it's just been put there to tick a diversity box. So, of course, people with disabilities use travel all the time, but speak to the disability community, include people with disabilities in the content creation. And sorry,
I feel like in that sense, it's similar to the Indigenous Australian conversation. They just haven't been included in the people who aren't them have been making decisions for them for a long time. I feel like we're
exactly right.
Similar to that. Not to,
but it's unfairly. It's actually sorry.
So, no, I'm just saying you're right.
It's
they need to
just interesting that we. Yeah, sorry. I think that we were sort of cutting out a bit there, but it's really interesting. It's really interesting because before we came onto the podcast here, we were talking about this here in Australia. We're about to have ADHD inquiry in Parliament, and one of the biggest things that I really, if something goes ahead, is that what really ticks me off sometimes is that when the government says something about, we're going to do this for this here, whatever that is, if it's neurodiversity or whatever, but then they're employing people to look after these programs who aren't even neurodistinct themselves, or they're not disabled themselves, or something like that. I really hope that with this ADHD inquiry that's going to be going ahead, that they really do listen to what needs to be happened. The right people are being listened to. And when I mean the right people, I mean us. And we are able to make those decisions or help, and I get it from a political standpoint as well. There's probably going to be a lot of things that we want, but maybe that takes time. And so we've got to be open-minded to a lot of these things. Change takes time, but our voices need to be heard, and we're the best people to be able to answer those questions, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Having people make decisions for the disability community when they have no lived experience and no understanding of it just does my head in. I have an exercise physiologist who I see twice a week for rehabilitation, and he has clients with paralysis and who are quadriplegic, and they are declined exercise physiology by NDIS staff who don't know the difference between a quadriplegic and a paraplegic, who are denying essential services because they just don't understand how therapy can benefit someone with, these sorts of decisions are being made by people who just, I know this is
no idea.
Completely different from what I came here to talk about, but it really does need an overview for reasons just like that.
Oh, look, I think it's good that we're talking about this because this is real. This is what is happening, and I think this is what the listeners have either experienced themselves or maybe these are people who do need to hear this type of stuff. So I think it's good that we're actually speaking about this, and I think we're doing it in a constructive way as well. We're not going, hey, nah, F you, stuff like that. And, and I think as well, this is a really good opportunity to go, look, we do have a lot of things we want to say, but we actually want to work with people to be able to help make this change, not be against you type of thing. So, no, I think it's great type of stuff. But, one thing I was thinking about when you were talking about that and you're like, you refuse to do that ad because they're just plonking a wheelchair in the middle of the beach and all that type of stuff. Let's say, for example, someone does take that ad type of thing and it's almost sort of like embarrassing to the community because people are going to watch that and be like, look at this. What the hell? And let's say someone like yourself was to take that and being such an advocate that you are, that could be really bad for your brand and everything all the work you're doing if you take those wrong sort of directions, if that makes sense.
Well, that's partly why I turned it down, because I thought I can't possibly do something like this when it's everything that I advocate against. Where I had quite literally used that example not 2 weeks earlier when I was speaking to an advertising agency, except that I had used snow as my example of how not to do advertising by plonking a wheelchair in the middle of the snow. So I thought I can't possibly, do an ad like this.
It's such a cynical, tokenistic representation.
So I really hope. But I didn't go in there with, guns blazing, claws out and everything and go, this is terrible. F you, don't do it. As a former agency person, I wanted to sit down with them and go, guys, this is how you can, shoot it this way, pan the camera that way. Let's discuss it and brainstorm it. And it didn't even need like a 30-minute conversation. It was purely a 5-minute conversation. I could have written the script myself. It was that simple. But they didn't even want to engage in the conversation. So there's an educational process that needs to happen, and agencies and content creators need to be open to having that discussion with people who have experience in these areas. I think I made the point yesterday that social media has been exceptional. It has been really, really wonderful for people from marginalised communities to get their voices out, because previously people like myself and lots and lots of other people would not have been heard by one of the gatekeepers who said only you get heard. So social media has been wonderful. We get to be heard. But on the other hand, it has been detrimental because too many voices. I want to say this very carefully because
I get you.
Okay, thank you. It's my word.
No. No. It's good, but I go for it.
I know lots of brands are speaking to me and they're saying we're just getting called out and we're getting shut down and we're getting. Brands are too afraid to do anything, so they're doing nothing. So people and this fear of doing nothing it's halting progress. And there was an article in Forbes that I shared a little while ago. This call out culture, it's great. On one hand, this ability to call brands out and make them accountable, it's wonderful. It's really, really good. And giving people a voice, great. But it's also really, really shitty because it's halting progress and it's stopping brands from having a go and trying to just
they're too scared.
dip their toe in the water.
Yeah, they're too scared to go. No, totally. And it's such a good point, I think. This is really awesome stuff to hear, and especially for the audience to listen to as well.
Okay,
but
that's the feedback I get from brands as well. We're too afraid to do anything because someone's going to call us out. And I know I did make that point one day on social. I'm like, guys, chill the fuck out. You know, brands are too afraid to do anything. Accountability is really important, and I'm not saying don't call out brands. They get it really, really wrong, but we need to give brands permission to maybe make some mistakes and get it wrong. Everyone's human.
Yeah, and you were talking about the social media thing and everyone having a voice, and very good on one hand, and being able to call brands out on one hand is very good. But the other time, you know, it's just a simple fact of life. Sometimes the people doing the calling out are wrong, because everyone can say what they want. You know, no matter what you say, someone online can take issue with it.
Everyone hates me.
Yeah. we weren't pointing the finger at you.
No. But,
man.
They could do an advertisement exactly correctly based on research, working with someone like yourself, and it could be amazing. There's still going to be someone online within the neurodiverse community who's going to take some issue somewhere with it, and they may not even be wrong. They might not just understand that that's not helping the cause. So it's you know, like with most things in life, it's a complicated conversation. It's not easy.
Is, yeah.
But it requires nuance and discussion.
It does. Yeah. It does require a lot of nuance. I know I've received so much trolling, and so much of it just makes me laugh, and a lot of trolling about things that I've done or things that I'm like, well, I don't see you doing anything or having a go or trying. Come to me when you're actually putting yourself out there and having a go.
Yeah.
Then we'll talk.
Yeah, no, and you're dead right. And, you know, I get that stuff as well. Like, I got to admit that, you know, a big thing I think with social media was that I used to be quite not vocal, but I would post a lot and I would share certain views. But now I've actually just stepped back from it a lot, you know. For one, I was just getting so frustrated with a lot of just crap that had absolutely nothing to do with what I was posting about. It was like people were just saying something for the sake of it type of shit. Do you know what I mean? And I was just like, I just got to a point where I was sick of it. And I was like, you know what? And I felt that I used to try and share a lot of stuff on social media to get, you know, likes or follows or stuff like that. Now I just share what's close to me, you know, and if someone likes that, good. If they don't like that, don't like it, whatever. You know what I mean? That's how I approach social media now. And with the trolls and that, I just got into a point where I don't even comment on stuff that has nothing to do with what I'm talking about these days, because it's not worth your mental health.
Yeah.
You know? And this is the thing, right? I think to myself, I'm working towards something bigger. I'm not going to waste my time on here. I've got things. I'm getting some big contracts happening with some big companies and stuff like that. Why am I getting pissed off about this person who's not happy about something I'm not doing, who's not even doing something themselves? So, no, credit to you, Lisa. You're doing an awesome job.
Yeah. I like what someone just said here in the comments, which is that we need to call out
do you
brands.
want me to get that back up? Hang on, let me get that back up. I did show that before. So did you want to read it out, Kev?
I just said we need to call out brands who are doing it right. That's a good positive spin on the whole situation.
Great point.
Yeah, totally. And actually, before we sort of do call out some of those brands, and I'm sure that will be fine to do, probably not the wisest to call out the brands not doing it right.
Yeah.
We could probably be looking down the barrel of a lawsuit there. But what do we have? The next question we're about to get into was, what would your advice be for media and advertising being wanting to be more inclusive? So maybe this is where you could say, well, this company is doing this good, or I don't know. This could be where we could plug some people doing some good things.
Sure. So, hi me. No.
Yeah, totally.
First and foremost, no matter who or what, engage with people from the sector. If there is a project, I said this yesterday in the presentation to film and television students. If it's an advertising project, if it's no matter what it is, engage with people from the disability community. If your budget allows, of course, whether it's going over a script, for example, if you want to make sure the language is right, if you don't have a disability, or if you don't have a script writer with a disability, ask a person with a disability to review the script. There is a resource that I helped put together with a really great team from Media Diversity Australia. It's the Disability Reporting Handbook. And we put that together over a 3-year period. MediaDiversityAustralia.org is the website, and it's a free download for anyone who wants it under the Resources tab. And it was put together by working journalists in conjunction with people from the disability sector, peak disability organisations, and consultants with lived experience, including myself. The reason was that there are some really great disability advocates out there saying, do this in the media, do this, but no understanding as to sort of how the industry worked and why certain things were done like they were. By the same token, some great journalists and media professionals out there, but no understanding as to the nuances of the disability sector and why things needed to be said like they were. So from my own experience, having had stories written about me, I'd read them sometimes and think, shit, why do they use that language, inspiration porn or whatever? And journalists are really lovely people, most of them, and don't go out of their way to be assholes. And I'd often think, if only there was a handbook or something to give them the right language and tools to really say the right thing, because they're good people, but they just don't have that education, I suppose. So we put together a handbook over 3 years with working journalists and people with disabilities, and the Human Rights Commission signed that off. And it is a free resource for anyone who wants to use it. It's not just journalists who are using this. As I mentioned yesterday, the film and TV students are all using it. They're writing scripts and doing things like that. People in marketing, communications, all sorts of communications industries are using it as well. It's got all sorts of tips, just general language and don't say wheelchair bound or confined to a wheelchair. Oh, this is not neurodiverse language, of course, but Lisa is a wheelchair user, generally speaking. It's got tips for all sorts of disabilities as well as the neurodivergent community as well. So it's more a resource if you're interested in that sort of thing. But another tip would be to, in the advertising and media space, not just look at what you can do in front of the camera. Representation is really, really important in front of the camera, but it's also behind the camera as well. And I spoke about this yesterday to the film and TV students. There's a saying, you can't be what you can't see. So, yeah, by all means, put someone with disability or, Heartbreak High, neurodivergent people in front of the camera. But the script writers, producers and editors, having them behind the camera as well is also really important. So having that holistic representation is really key.
Yeah. Sorry, you go, Kev.
So just quickly, going back to that resource that you helped put together, where can people access that if they need to?
Sure. MediaDiversityAustralia.org.
Yeah,
cool. So for all of our listeners out there, we've just released a blog. So what we normally do now is for every episode that we release on the podcast, we write a blog based on the information that we learnt about on the actual podcast, in the blog. So what we might do once we release that blog, which will be a little while because I'm the one writing them, and being dyslexic and ADHD, I'm not the fastest writer. So I'm getting there, I'm getting better. But we'll do a link to that so our listeners can find that information as well. So that will be, I think that's an awesome tool for people to use because, like you said, at the end of the day, people, say for example, if someone writes a story about you, their heart is in the right place, right?
Yeah.
That's right. And it's just those little things that they're missing, which they have no idea that they may have offended someone or something like that. So having something there to help people with that is only going to help make that better and help people to go, oh, okay, now I understand why that language can't be used or how that might be offensive to someone or something like that.
Yeah, there's a section about autism and all sorts of, neurodivergence and everything. It's all broken up into sections. And if you don't want to read the whole thing, there's a quick read section as well.
You know what I was just thinking just then, and that's like probably a real neurodistinct thing that's going on in my brain right now. Kev, we should have like a resources section on our website where there's like a page where people can go to and click on things like this resource or other resources and make it really easy for people to find.
Yeah. Quick side note for anyone who might not know yet, we have a website now. So
So if you go to openheartedsociety.com, you can check out all of our, podcasts, blogs that are happening, events that will be happening in the future, and also be able to connect with other people who we've interviewed and all that type of stuff in the past there. But we might move on with that. Now, what exactly is the power of visibility for disability in media and advertising?
The power is so great, so great. So I came from a background in advertising and I knew the power of visibility because I'd spent so many years creating visibility for my clients, their products, their messages, their all of those sorts of things. And then when I acquired my disability, secondary ADHD with my brain injury, I realized I could transfer all of those skills over to something probably a lot more important than the European cars and everything like that I'd previously been advertising in the advertising agency. So I transferred all those skills over to disability and started creating visibility for disability because it'd been underrepresented for as long as I could remember, really. I've seen the power of visibility and what creating visibility for my clients had done, and I wanted to do the same thing for disability, basically. So visibility changes social attitudes towards things, perceptions, public perceptions around disability, and that's what we can do by changing attitudes towards disability, our attitudes about ADHD, autism, those sorts of things. So that's what I want to do. That's what I hope this podcast is doing through the work that I do.
Yeah, awesome. Now, that's the thing. I think that the more we see something, and this is the thing. I was only having a conversation with someone the other day, and I sort of introduced them to the term neurodiversity, and they're like, I've never heard of it before I met you. And then they said, after speaking to you about it, it was like, say if you want to buy like a red car, and you'd never see that red car on the road, but as soon as you like buy it or you're thinking of buying it, you know how you constantly start seeing it all the time type of thing? He was saying the same thing started to happen with him. He's like, he just started to all of a sudden start seeing stuff about neurodiversity and all that type of stuff. And I suppose that was just a real powerful sort of message about when we do talk about it more, once we do open more people up to it, more people start to think, hey, well, that's not inclusive, or this is not inclusive, or that company's doing really well with some stuff, or hey, that company's not doing so good with it, and all of that. So it definitely does play. And I think especially once we see places doing things properly, it does play such a huge role. What are your thoughts on that, Photon John?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it in action. I've mentioned once or twice before that since we started doing the podcast in Brisbane, I've been like stopped at the pub, sometimes by people I don't know who just say, wow, I've listened to your podcast, I've decided to go get diagnosed. Other people like neurotypical, but they're just like, the way you speak about it, just so matter-of-factly, I just kind of am starting to understand it in a way I never did before. And then even friends of mine who they didn't know they were neurodiverse. I didn't realize because autistic don't see things, but so I'm seeing it, and all we're doing is sitting here, a couple of mates having a chat every fortnight, talking to some great people. So you can see it in action. The proof's in the pudding, and if you can get it out through the megaphone that is media and advertising, you're just broadening that net, and it'll work great.
And I think you hit the nail. You hit the nail on the head before, Lisa, about the power of social media. Say back 20 years ago, it would have been really difficult to really be getting out. It would have almost been like those picket protesting things that would have got your sort of message out there. But now we're able to connect with so many people. Here with the podcast, for example, there was no podcast back to it. You'd have to specifically go on a radio show to be able to. But now we're able to connect with like-minded people who want to learn about this, point them in the right direction of stuff. And I think that's where, it's gold. It's so helpful for so many of us. But in saying that, when we forgot to sort of really shout out to anyone there, what are some examples of companies doing great things in terms of visibility? Like, could you name any companies out there? If you don't know, that's all good. We don't have to say.
And I'll give a shout out to Styling You, the label, because they've been really great in creating visibility for disability including.
Sorry, what was the name of that again?
Styling You, the label. You guys wouldn't be Styling You, the label on Instagram.
Okay.
You guys wouldn't be interested because it's women's clothing,
yep.
But they've been really great in just including visibility for disability in front of the camera. But Natalie, who's the mutual friend of ours, she is doing some really great work in the neurodiversity space. She's working with mainstream retailers and approaching them and basically teaching them how to better equip their stores for neurodiverse customers, which they don't know a lot about. So,
and I think,
I can't remember the name of her website off the top of my head, but you can put it in the show notes afterwards, Will. But Nat is doing some fantastic work.
I think it's something changed. It's on our website. If you go to our website in the support partners section, it's let's see if I can get it up straight away.
Australian Retailers Association recently republished some articles of hers, and she's really doing some great stuff.
Inclusive change. So if you go to our website and go to our supporters section on the homepage and click on inclusive change, you'll be able to connect with her website there.
Yeah, so there's some people doing some great stuff on some small businesses, but it's people doing great stuff at that big industry level that I really love to see creating.
Totally see a bit more happening there. Yeah, and because they do have the big voices. They've got the money behind them. And it's amazing how much a huge corporate getting behind something like this and doing it properly, how much change they can actually make there. It was actually interesting because Lisa and we sat down with Nat and had a chat about, she did a survey and we had sort of like what would you call it? Like a roundtable sort of chat about some of the things we sort of face, being disabled and that going into shopping places, into shops and stuff like that. And it was interesting, to hear different people's perception of what they face in certain situations. So, once we do sort of talk, what's that?
Around Christmas time.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing. I struggle hardcore going to a shopping center. It's Christmas time. I hate going there at that time. It's almost like torture for me, and I'm not saying that in like a funny way. It does. I'm sort of like, oh my God, I just, that's the best way I can describe what's going on in my mind.
No, I can't stand it as well. And I think retailers need to pay more attention to the work Nat is doing, because in their minds, they're just like, the more tinsel and Mariah, the better. But then they're not realizing the number of neurodivergent customers they have. And
how would you know?
That too. But so many of us are just like, I can only speak for myself, but I just see Christmas and tinsel, and I just see mess and clutter, and I can't get out of there soon enough. And the noise, and it just looks like a fairy has vomited, and I can't. Meanwhile, retailers are like, tinsel, let's go nuts, and
or loud music. And stuff like that.
Keeping people like me and my credit card well away.
Well, even just the fact when people are coming up to you going, oh, excuse me, sir, can I help you? As soon as you walk through the door, that stuff as well. Like, I get it. They're trying to make sales and all that. But for me, I'm sort of like, just leave me alone. You know what I mean? I like it when people don't say anything to me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm the same, because I have to rehearse for unexpected conversations. So for conversations, so like that kind of unexpected interaction, I just sort of shut down and just like don't know what to do.
I'm in a wheelchair, so people don't say anything to me anyway. They leave me alone because they're like, oh, she
won't want any help. Yeah, that's wrong.
Wow.
And you were even saying that's and that's like the opposite to us type of thing. You were sort of saying you want some help and you're waiting there.
Borrow my wheelchair and people will leave you alone anyway.
Well, maybe, that could be a way for us to solve that problem. But but no, look, I think, Kev, was there anything else you wanted to go over with Lisa? We've covered some really awesome stuff there.
Mm-hmm. No, not really. Just you're doing great work, Lisa. It's admirable.
Totally. And did anyone else have any more questions before we finish up the podcast today? If not, Lisa, whereabouts can people find you and the work you're doing? Do you have a website?
I have a website that's currently, same as my Instagram, lisacox.co, LASACOX.co. It's getting a bit of makeover because it hasn't been made over in 10 years or so. Mm-hmm. But Instagram's where I spend most of my time because I don't spend an awful lot of time on social media because I'm probably spending more time doing the work.
Which it should be, right?
Not on Twitter, so
yeah.
I'm there occasionally to have a laugh, but apart from that,
so it's just
a casual 117,000 followers.
Yeah.
Instagram.
Just a casual. Hey, out of curiosity, Lisa, so is that your like business name, Lisa Cox, like, or is it like something, I don't know, just because, and maybe once you do get your website all sorted and that, it could be cool to have you as like one of the supporting partners of the podcast so people can find you a lot easier on our homepage and that.
Sure. Well, I started a business years ago, but that's not my business name. But lisacox.co is just the, haven't really sorted out the technicals.
Okay, fair enough. That's cool. We can sort something out. That's no problem at all. I just thought it could be cool to try and help people connect to all the awesome work you're doing and stuff like that. Doesn't look like we've had too many people come through with questions. Lisa, this has been a lot of fun. Did you enjoy yourself?
Absolutely. I had a great time.
Nice. Well, from the looks of it, it looks like it's great weather around Sydney. Do you have much plans for the rest of the day?
No, I have a little bit of work to do this afternoon, and then I think I'll have a bit more coffee.
Bit more coffee. Did you fly down this morning? Sorry?
No, I didn't.
No, last night.
This morning, yesterday.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Now, if anyone else is listening, please, like I said before, subscribe, follow, and like all of our social media pages. Like we said, we've got our website now. This podcast will be up there pretty much within an hour. Once I get off here, I'll just upload it all up there. Please connect with Lisa on all of her social media platforms. My name's Will Wheeler with my main man, Photon John. Lisa Cox, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
This is the OpenHearted Podcast. Till next time.